We're asking all the toughest questions so that we can get inside their heads.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for tuning into Fresh FM Sunday night. It's Dee Benz coming at you live from the Fresh FM studio here in Calgary on a Easter Sunday evening. Happy Easter to everybody out there. For those of you who celebrated Good Friday, shalom to you, and for those of you who celebrated the Passover, shalom again. And for those of you who celebrated Good Friday in a different fashion, happy hangover to you and good morning. Once again, this is Dee Benz hollering at you from Fresh FM. Thanks for tuning in. If you're listening live, just remember that you can also, if you miss our broadcast, tune in anytime to our YouTube channel, which is Fresh Politics on YouTube. Also, make sure you check us out on our Fresh FM page for any updates, shows that might be coming up and so forth. Just a few announcements before we kick off here. Make sure you check out Let's Get Buck Mondays, Monday night from 9 till 10 p.m. Make sure you stay tuned in after the show for Aisha Ali on the radioactive word. I believe that's what they're called. I can never get that right.
Radiology.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So tune in after the show for 8:30 p.m. to Aisha Ali and Word Radiology. The girl's coming at you right after our show here at 8:30 p.m., so stay tuned. Also, make sure you check out Beat Bash Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every weekday on Fresh FM, every Tuesday weekday. Every Friday night we got the Wood Shack Rap, Cherry Haze Fridays, DT Presents, and DJ Number One bumping tonight in our regular Friday night lineup. So make sure you check that out with myself Friday nights, Dee Benz from 9 to 11, and J Fusion from 6 to 12. Saturday, make sure you check out DJ Newboy and Morbo, Hard Vibrations by Silver Heat. Hope I said that right. And of course, make sure you check out Politically Inclined if you haven't already on Sunday nights with Fresh FM. I believe I've gone through the ringers here. So now it's time to introduce our guest tonight. We got our own J Fusion, Mr. Big Jeff, studio manager with Fresh FM in studio, and he's going to be talking a little bit about politics with us this week. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on your third show. I've been listening in since your pilot, and I really appreciate the work you've done. Huge studio here. I love it. Lots of work you guys have put into it. So,
not to mention a lot of money, but
yeah,
that's a different point altogether.
Absolutely. Tonight, I'm not J Fusion, I'm not studio manager, I'm not general manager of Fresh. Just Jeff, the guy on the street, just another citizen. I'm not representing any particular opinions or people, just myself. So I'm looking forward to having a good discussion about what I think and what you think and going from there.
And thanks for the comment. Big welcome from Jay Fuzzy. From Matthew Taylor saying, Jay Fuzzy, eye on up and dis bitch. So thanks for tuning in, Matthew Taylor. Start us off. I guess tonight's topic there, Jeff. We're going to talk a little bit about partisan politics, post-partisan politics, and why people should or should not associate one specific political party. And welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in, Michelle Russell.
What's up, Michelle? That's actually my girlfriend. So, love you, baby. We wanted to talk about partisan politics, though. That's a really good discussion because I've worked for about 4 political parties. I've worked from everything from the NDP, the Green Party, the Conservatives. Who am I leaving out? The Liberals, a little bit. I've never worked for the Bloc. That's probably the only party I've never worked with.
And the Progressive Canadians.
Yeah, we got them on the side. So I've worked with quite a few parties, so I know a lot about partisan politics, and I know extremes, and I also know people that fit in the middle, which I guess I could say I'm one of those people because I've worked for so many different parties. I don't affiliate myself with one particular ideology, one particular view. I like to have a mixed mash of everything and kind of form my own opinion. That's basically how I vote as well. So, how about yourself? Awesome. You obviously have run for a party before. Where do you fit anywhere nowadays?
I'm sort of neutral on the political spectrum. I mean, after running for a particular party, I mean, my involvement with the Progressive Canadian Party of Canada was obviously sort of a light involvement, but I mean, I was their candidate for Calgary Centre. It didn't work out, and I mean, I still have contact with them. I still work with them lightly, but at the moment, I'm sort of politically neutral, and my reasoning for that is solely, just because I choose not to be sort of partisan. I like to give every party an equal opportunity to sort of voice their opinions and see where I fit in.
Yeah. Do you fit anywhere nowadays, though? Because I always like to ask other people that, because I don't feel like I fit with any particular party, and that's, I think, a lot of people from their early 30s all the way down don't, like, they've lost the connection with the party, whereas, our parents and grandparents, they vote that party no matter what. They love that party. That's all they vote for. My family's very conservative on the one side. My other side lives out in BC, very NDP. You couldn't change them if, came down the last tree and they had nothing to hug anymore. Like, that's it. Like, both sides extremely polar opposites. We still have Christmas and Thanksgiving, but you never talk about politics or religion because nobody's ever going to agree. So
Absolutely, and I mean that's a big problem. Is so many people die hard to one specific party. How does anybody ever come to an agreement, and how can we come to an agreement and just sort of peacefully coexist with our differentiation in political viewpoints?
Well, I found that, especially in the last few years, people that are involved in politics have become, I think, a lot more extreme to whatever ideology they're part of. Maybe it's because I've participated more, but I've noticed in the past that people are willing to work together, especially as, my background's history. That's what I've studied in school. That's when I went to graduate with my degree. I've read a lot about great compromises in the past to make things work either in Canada, the United States, Great Britain, throughout, parties from across the aisle, everything from the Communist Party working together with the Conservative Party. Now, of course, the Communist Party wasn't ever really
I thought
big.
the Communist Party or the Conservative Party was a Communist Party, just a Canadian version. But
Well, I would say they're. Actually, I'm not going to say what I was thinking. But really,
we're sort of bordering there, but that's a different topic for a different night.
We're getting a little partisan, yeah. But people have worked together in the past, and that's always been my perspective, is just whether or not you agree on a topic, finding the best compromise, the best way to make it work. It's worked to get in such programs as healthcare. Whether or not, it's still a debate going on, most Canadians would say they like healthcare, the public education, anything public pretty much we've had to agree on. Being part of wars in the past, there has to be some compromise to say, yes, this is good for the nation, this is good for the people, whether or not my own personal beliefs are good or are part of this, decision. I think it's better for Canada as a whole. I think, maybe we should get more on Canada, because the United States is pretty diverse. But I mean, as a whole, in the past, we have worked together. What's going on nowadays? Why, if you're part of the NDP, you can't ever vote for a conservative bill. If you're a liberal, you can't vote for a conservative bill. But if you're a conservative, you can't vote for the other ones either. And the Bloc, they just hate everyone. So I'm just wondering why that is now and not so much in the past.
I think a lot of it in the past is just tradition. The folks from the 1920s and 30s were very political. They were very active with a partisan affiliation. And nowadays, people are a lot less interested in politics. People are a lot less informed with politics. They just sort of we've gone from a society which votes based on a political viewpoint to a society which, in turn, is contrasted to more a vote based on likability of a particular candidate.
Well, I notice that most people I talk to nowadays will never even know who their candidate is. They'll just know, I'm voting Liberal, I'm voting NEP, I'm voting Green, whatever. Which is sad, because in the last provincial election, I had a former Stampede wrestler running in my area. I lived in Linwood, right beside Ogden. And that's actually what helped make my decision. I know as ridiculous as it was, I didn't see any major issue that stood out in the election. So I said, well, hell, let's go for the wrestler. And that's cool. I can tell people I voted for a Stampede wrestler. That is the most ridiculous reason. Never vote that way, please. But I mean, that, at least I knew who my candidate was.
Well, even on the local level with Mayor Nenshi, it seems that a lot of his popularity and his following, we'll call it, is waning off of a popularity vote. People who took a liking to Mayor Nenshi, sort of see him as a man of the people over other political candidates who were running in the same election, and he took the time to reach out to different demographics that others would normally reach out to, like the students and the gay population. There was numerous different populations that were sort of ignored that he reached out to and sort of made them feel like they had a voice, and in turn that gained him enough popularity to sort of slide ahead in the ratings.
I have a lot of different ideas on Nenshi. I mean, Nenshi, for instance, or for my experience, I worked with Nenshi. When I was student president at Mount Royal, he worked with the students a lot. He was one of a few professors that would go out of his way, because he's a former student president himself at the U of C. He would go out of his way to find what would work between the professors and the students and get the best things forward for the academic programs. I loved working with him there, and that's one of the reasons I supported him. Now, a big reason why he did so well, too, is because he had such a grasp, and his campaign team had such a grasp on online social media, because it was really taking off then. I'm saying it's massive now, but it's a lot harder to get through because there's so much abuse of it. But at that time, I mean, Twitter was, just really taking off, Facebook, YouTube, all these things that the other candidates weren't fully jumping behind. And I thought that was such a benefit for him. And then reaching out to these, certain particular communities, because he started off 1%. And everyone, basically said he had no chance. He stuck in there. He gave his best ideas. That was another reason why I think he did so well, because he had the best ideas. But he really worked social media. He didn't have a partisan attack on anybody in particular, and there was some very partisan politics in that election. There was councilmen that were very far right-wing conservative. There was people running that just wanted to have chickens in their backyards. There was people all over the political spectrum. He tried to stick to the middle. He tried not to stay partisan, and again, he had the best ideas for the city of Calgary. That's what I really liked. It was a nonpartisan win. He didn't win upon party lines because civic politics, there's no parties allowed. Yeah. But a lot of times, one's more liberal than another, and that's kind of like Bronco's a hardcore liberal, our former mayor. Yeah. We've had Ralph Klein as a mayor. Rest in peace. Unfortunately, he passed away this weekend, but he was conservative. But we didn't know really kind of where Nenshi felt.
I call him more PC. But
yeah, he was never really conservative.
And I have to say, Ralph Klein was also an excellent leader. He was an exceptional example of somebody who really reached out to his people, the people who elected him and the people he cared about. His reputation preceded him. I remember meeting Ralph Klein after playing blackjack next to the guy for an hour and not even know who he was. And it wasn't until he bought a round of drinks for everybody at the table and said compliments to the government of Alberta. Even after his retirement, he was still joking about still joking about being King Ralph.
Yeah, I see. It's such a hard thing to once somebody dies to knock them for any reason. I have lots of opinions on Ralph Klein. I really liked the book by Don Martin I read a number of years ago. It was really good, perspective on him. I would say he was a great mayor for Calgary. He was okay as a provincial leader for the first half of his career, and I think he absolutely did a terrible job the second half, especially with Ralph Bucks, being a student at the time, going to university, watching my tuition increase, $1,000 per year, and we're getting $600 back. We saw, my roommate, for instance, who had been here from Mexico, not as a citizen, but just as a student here, less than 6 months, you got a $600 check. It was just, the money could have been invested in different places, but then again, you look at the other side where he brought the Olympics to Calgary. So it's such a hard topic, him. I'm very sad he's passed away, because he was a dynasty. He was a giant.
He was legendary. He was a lot like, to our generation, he was like Peter Lougheed was to the prior generation. He was revered. He was held in high regard, and obviously he's going to be heavily missed. Like I say, he did have a partisan affiliation. Speaking back to Mayor Nenshi now, and remembering that, asking the question. Nobody really knows. It's interesting that Mayor Nenshi doesn't really have, if he does have an affiliation with any particular party, he hasn't really made it public or known. He definitely conducts himself as a very neutral individual when it comes to the political spectrum. Nobody really knows what his partisan affiliation actually is, if he has one.
Yeah, I think the term that I really like to use is moderate. And I think moderate, I really picked up on that term. The King of Jordan actually did a guest appearance on The Daily Show one time. And he said, I'm one of the few moderates left in the Middle East. So there's, the term radicalism used. He said, really, it's a new term of conservatism. But as a moderate, I try to find out the best answers. I do the best research I can and find the best solutions that I can. I have no particular belief system besides my own religion that helps guide my life. But other than that, I'm a moderate, and I thought, wow, how brilliant this man is. So I love to use the term moderate ever since I saw that interview, and I definitely think Nenshi is, the best example of what a moderate is.
Yeah, and I mean, moving on to moving on with the discussion here as far as partisan politics. So, I mean, there's a lot more option and selection than there used to be. There's a lot of newer political parties that are sort of coming out of the woodwork, trying to make a name for themselves, and more and more people are sort of separating themselves from those traditional partisan affiliations and sort of branching out, creating new parties, so that people have more selection, more choice, and more of an opportunity to choose from different sides of the political spectrum.
It happens occasionally. I mean, as a student of history, I've seen a lot of it happen, whether it's in this province where actually the Communist Party we were talking about earlier, but it actually started in this province. It started because of a bunch of reasons, but primarily it was unions that were underrepresented, parts of Calgary that were heavily, lower class, underrepresented. And it was pretty much new for the time as well. It was a brilliant idea for, if you didn't know what was coming later on down the road when it was actually applied. So we've had things like that, the rise of the CCF to the NDP starting in this province, as well as Saskatchewan, growing in BC, Ontario, everywhere else, or Quebec blowing everyone's mind, why it's done so well recently. But as far as like new modern parties, even the Green Party is doing okay. But who were some parties that you were thinking of, though? I was just interested.
I mean, you have the Libertarian Party, which has sort of come out of the woodwork in the more recent few years. You have the Progressive Canadian Party, which has actually been one of Canada's oldest political parties, but is not well known as much as it was because of the sort of tangled mess with the Harper scenario. I mean, you've got the Progressive Canadian Party coming out of the woodwork. You've got all of these different political viewpoints that are being expressed by individuals, and a lot of independents also starting to run.
Now, does the Action Party still exist? Do you remember the Action Party?
The Action Party does exist, but they haven't been active in the political spectrum.
And what was the one that, who worked for QR77 here? He was a Liberal, and then he stepped down after losing the leadership race. What was his name here in Calgary? He joined another political party here in the province. It wasn't the Progressives, but it was something along those lines. But yeah, there's another example of another new political party. It takes a long time to get any headway in this country. The Green Party has now got their first elected representative after how many years of running in elections and being across the country.
Absolutely, and
it's tough. But
there was a lot of high hopes that they would have their second here in Calgary Centre during the last election with Chris Turner. Everybody seemed to have a belief that he had major potential, and in the end, it came down because of partisan loyalty to the two major players between the Conservatives and the Liberals.
How did he do? Like, how close was it?
He was third in the running.
Okay, that's not bad. So they beat the NDP.
Yeah, he actually did outdo the NDP, surprisingly.
Or in Alberta, they call it the Communist Party. But being from small town Alberta, yeah, it's very unlikely, unless it's right near the University of Alberta, that any NDP is ever going to get elected. Working with them as well as the Green Party, I've seen high hopes and I've seen bad results. But I got to give them a lot of credit. They still believe in their cause. They fight for good ideas, and they want to do the best that they can. Whether or not their ideas are always perfect, whether or not the other party's ideas are perfect, they fight for a better candidate. So I respect all the people that run. And just unfortunately, it's always between the top two contenders. So
absolutely, and a lot of animosity towards the NDP recently, with people going as far as even accusing Leclerc of being a communist dictator trying to take over Canada.
Wow, interesting. Why? Well, he's a little bit more he's a lot more aggressive than Leighton was, but wouldn't say he was a communist dictator. But of course, that's just throwing stuff back and forth. They got another how many years to go before the next election, unfortunately. So
well, absolutely, and I mean. Let's be honest. Leclerc does have his high points. I mean, he's a no BS kind of guy. He sort of just straight up tells it like it is.
A lot of people were kind of pushing him toward that, though. The media was jumping behind it. The NDP was like, "Oh, he's our attack dog. He's going to go on the attack. He's going to hold the Conservatives." but they never say the Conservatives. They always say Harper. Harper's government. It's always around Harper. Like nobody else exists in the Conservatives.
Well, I mean, with the merger of the government of Canada officially being rebranded as the Harper government since the majority Conservative government came into power.
I've noticed that actually a lot more. Is the Harper government does this, the Harper government does that, and even when it's representing a government of Canada decision, that kind of scares me a little bit because again, it should be a representation of all of Parliament, no matter who's in charge. Shouldn't have any name or party affiliated to it. It should just be the government of Canada has done, regardless of who's won the election.
And it seems like we're moving towards that. He actually did do a legal name change to make it that way.
Smart politically, or politically, but again, not so good for democracy, I don't think.
No, definitely not good for democracy, and again, sort of a disservice to partisan politics. So I think that that's also a big reason that people are sort of straying from partisan affiliation nowadays, is because they just don't have a level of trust in any particular party or party representative who might be running as a candidate to represent their interests.
I think it's gotten really bad since, and let's go federally. It's gotten really bad federally since, I think, Kim Campbell's party's attack on Chrétien and his face. Do you remember that? A long time ago, that commercial is saying, like, is this the face you would trust? It got a little nasty then. But then it was okay because, there was the Reform Party movement on the side, and everything on the right was kind of messed up for a while. And then, Martin came along after Chrétien, and he was trying to stay in power, and he kind of muffled things up. And
then Joe Clark following.
Yeah,
and there was a big uproar over something that he had done, and
but right after, right around the time of Martin, that's when the political shit really hit the fan, and they really started becoming nasty. The Liberals, I think, were the worst, and the agitators in the beginning, but now it's gone, 180, and right on. It makes sense why one would be just as bad as the other because it's always trying to one up the other. But I would like to see it go back to the way it was, where it was ideas, that's what Peter Lougheed ran on. He's one of my political heroes. Whenever they'd ask him about the other parties, he would never say oh, the NDP or the Liberals are stupid and I can't stand them. He'd always say, well, this is my party's platform. This is what we're running on. I don't want to discuss anybody else's platform. This is mine. And that's how he won. It was a brilliant campaign. All it was is the word now with an exclamation, and he ran a brilliant campaign based upon the best ideas, and he won. And he never was about destroying the other party's credibility, destroying names, or hurting other people. He just ran for the best things.
Absolutely, and it seems like those who are genuinely for the people that they represent are the ones who seem to be most heavily chastised, both by the public eye and by the media.
Can we change the discussion just slightly? Because it just popped in my head, and this is one of the hardest discussions Canadians have. But coming from a history perspective, I always find this fun. So most people could probably name, even if they live in Canada, the top 5 presidents of all time. They have some names that come up to mind. You got Roosevelt, you got Lincoln, you got all these great heroes of America. Name the top 5 prime ministers of Canada and the reasons why.
That is an excellent question. And
I dare anybody to just jump out there and say there was somebody more fantastic than the other, because we seem to just destroy them as soon as they're out of power, and they're awful and maniacal, and this one did this one, and there was no freeing the slaves. There was no getting out of the Great Depression. There just was a prime minister at that time, and he was garbage, and then we got rid of that bomb and threw in another one. Okay, name the top 3. Name the top 3 in your personal opinion.
Well, obviously, Canadians favor a lot of historical prime ministers. Jean Chrétien had his plus sides, definitely as a Liberal leader in the Canadian eyes. Also, a lot of people revered Joe Clark. I didn't know
for his 30 seconds of fame.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. For his very short-lived
blip
run
on the radar.
His very short-lived run of politics.
Hell, John Turner had a longer term, I think, didn't he?
And moving forward, even a lot of people are saying now that Justin Trudeau is a great example of Canada's future and sort of a reflection of his father's image.
Is it that, or is it the royalty? Is it like the new, they're the version of the Kennedys for Canada, right? Because he's the next generation. But you look at Alberta and such hatred toward his father.
You know what? You want to talk about somebody that's living in his father's shadow that I think should run for politics just for the kicks? Ben Mulroney.
God.
Not even because it would be a service to Canada, just because it would be that comical to see people.
I would love to see Ben Mulroney run against Trudeau.
That would be comical. Ben Mulroney versus Trudeau. Mulroney versus Trudeau,
Round
2015.
Oh, God.
Would that not be the most comical political debate?
I think it would be good. I don't know what Mulroney would have to say, but he's just got so much charisma. So does Trudeau. I mean, they wouldn't really say much. It would just be interesting.
Although the question that I have, I mean, obviously while hosting American Idol, I mean, Mulroney's got a little more charisma, as you say. I mean, how many political icons or descendants of a former political icon do you know would actually drop their pants on TV and answer the long-lived question of boxers or briefs?
Absolutely.
Just to appease an audience.
I think Trudeau would do that, though. I mean, the boxing match between him and the criminal, or soon to be, what was his name again? Breezewa? No, the former senator who basically, stole money and was awful. I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, like, Trudeau is willing to do those things. He knows how to play the game. He's been sitting back and saying he wouldn't run for how long because it wasn't his time, and everyone around, he's got the best people around him. Quebec got wiped out, like the Liberals got wiped out, and he gained votes. There's a good reason for that, because he is surrounded by the best people in the party probably right now. He's going to win. There's no doubt in my mind, or most people's mind, unless some weird upset comes out of nowhere. It turns out, he was a child rapist or something. It'd have to be something really bizarre. Even then, they probably
sex scandal, but that sounds more like something the Royals would have.
Yeah, absolutely. It always, yeah. I can't see Trudeau not winning. I just can't see it. He's going to do well. I think he's the comeback kid.
I mean, obviously, right now there's going to be a huge boxing match in 2015 between the Liberals and the PCs, and who's going to take that? Who's going to take the race for that leadership?
Do you think Harper's going to stick in there that long? He's going to run again? I mean, he's been in the leadership since.
The man would be a disgrace to Canadian politics to rerun. He's disgraced is quite enough.
A lot of people don't like him. There's absolutely a love-hate relationship, but he just won a majority government. So there must be some people that either not necessarily don't like him, but it's the Conservatives themselves.
Most definitely. Well, Conservatives love tax breaks.
Yeah, that's true.
And corporations love tax breaks. So why not keep a guy that's given that to the Conservative government exactly what they want?
And the Liberals love to disintegrate politically. In the last 10 to 15 years, I don't know what's been going on since Kirchan left. They've basically just one.
They just sort of went into hiding, and they decided it was time to regroup their game plan, I think.
But what do they have for issues to run on, though? Like, really, like the last one was, what wasn't it? Federal-funded daycare systems, which I think it's a good idea.
That would be a fantastic idea.
I mean, it's a good idea.
Let's be honest, at least the Liberals have something to come to the table with more than shaking hands with panda bears instead of addressing the natives.
Yeah, that wasn't necessarily good. But, I mean, the Conservatives ran on some stuff. They ran a brilliant campaign. The Liberals destroyed themselves, and there's really nothing to stand on. They had that idea. I'm trying to remember what else. I was watching the whole election. Ignatieff really came across with nothing. He's, well, we're not the Conservatives. Well, that's not a good answer.
No, and even in the last by-election here, what I found as a candidate myself for that open seat in Calgary Centre, which was traditionally a PC seat and has been for many years, and it was actually the seat that put Joe Clark into his position. And several other known leaders have, several other known PCs and progressives have held that seat in Calgary Centre and for a very long time. And running in that seat as a known PC affiliate and a candidate for the Progressive Canadians, the old brand of PCs, against a Conservative candidate, there was some huge animosity and confusion as to who not only who I was as a candidate with that party, but also because there was not that presence of a progressive candidate per se until my appearance into the election. A lot of these parties on the far left side of the spectrum were trying to position themselves as, well, we are the progressive choice, when really we know darn well they're not.
Well, that's personal opinion. I don't know who the progressive choice is really at the end of the day. I'm going to support you because I like you. You're a good friend.
Not to mention I'm a handsome devil.
You're a handsome devil,
For those,
good radio host.
for those of you who can't see my face, check out our YouTube channel. I'm a good-looking fella.
Nothing but platitudes right here, back and forth. Honestly, though, I mean, okay, it's very tough for anybody to say I'm the progressive choice nowadays because everyone's vying for that term. It's a really good and widely used term in Alberta.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. Everybody was vying for that progressive choice. I was the only candidate, aside from Joan Crockett, dare I mention the Conservative candidate's name.
Was she related to Davy?
That is a good question.
That
I
would've
mean,
been cool
she
if
might
she
as well have been. They had pictures of her in a cowboy hat shooting off cap guns.
Oh, right on. Remember
So-
Harper and his cowboy getup a few years ago?
Yeah, I remember that.
We saw that in my class one time. It was great.
But obviously, I was the only candidate in that by-election in Calgary Centre that did not declare myself as a progressive candidate, only as a progressive Canadian candidate affiliating with the Progressive Canadian Party, and not actually trying to take that position of a progressive candidate, just sort of stating it, telling it like it is, and obviously receiving both the following and some public backlash. And going back earlier to what you said about social media and the use of social media in politics, I had one of the highest traffic pages for social media, and a lot of the other candidates, when they found out I was gaining such a following on social media, decided to follow suit.
And that's what happes though. If there's a good idea, they follow it. Here's going to be the fun thing. So you might.
Chris Turner was a great example of that. He didn't really have any ingenuity of his own. He just sort of reworded what I was saying.
Ah, very partisan. I like that. Okay, so we're talking about partisan politics. You just kind of give me a bit of a partisan, belief or your obvious opinion why you ran for the Progressive Canadians, but I want to hear you say something good about each candidate. I want you to say something nonpartisan, whether it's nice hair, that's what we used to say at work sometimes we're having a bad day. Nice hair, that's what my old manager Brad used to tell us to say, and it was hilarious, but it always worked, put a smile on her face. I want you to go through each candidate and tell me a good idea that they had and something good about themselves.
Well, I mean, with the by-election that we had in Calgary, I mean, Joan Crockett, I didn't really know her. I didn't get a chance to meet her because she never showed up to the debates, so I really can't say anything good about her. But
there's got to be something. There's got to be. Maybe she had nice posters. Look
she was,
in your heart. I'm not having a beer, by the way. This is my second nos of the night.
The only thing I can really think about Crockett, she knows how to sport a cowboy hat really well.
There you go.
We have Chris Turner. The man had charisma. He had a very good following, and he was very, very persuasive in gaining a following. We had Dan Meads with the NDP. He was definitely, genuine in what he was presenting, and he presents himself as a humanitarian, somebody who is, sincerely pursuing activism. So I can give kudos to that. Myself, the same boat. I actively pursue activism. I guess that's kind of a double entendre there.
You actively pursue activism. You know what? That's good, Bill. I like that.
Yeah, well, hey, nothing wrong with actively pursuing activism. That's just what makes us active.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're just running on with that word. Obviously, I mean, there was also Tony Prashad, who was running with the Libertarian Party in the election. I actually had some very in-depth and intelligent conversations with Tony, and the man has got some great ideas, and definitely came to the table, really strong as an underdog candidate. And I guess finally was Harvey Locke, who was the Liberal candidate. And
Tell me about Harvey, because I want to know. I've heard good things about Harvey. So
well,
I don't know. If
I shook hands with Harvey several times, and I don't think that he was really in it. I heard from a lot of people that he was sort of a conservative facading as a Liberal to try and sway people who didn't want to vote Conservative into voting for something that was sort of a hidden Liberal agenda.
Interesting.
And honestly, it really was. I mean, there was speculation that as soon as he became the Liberal candidate, that he would cross the floor.
Really?
There was a lot of speculation on that. And myself, I was his opposition. I was running against him. I shook his hand 4 times. I introduced myself. I wished him luck. And every single time I crossed paths with the man, shook his hand, said hello, and tried to be a good sport, not once did he remember who the hell I was.
Maybe, yeah, it sounds like it wasn't totally into it. Some people are bad for names, but...
You got, if you're going to run as a candidate, you got to know your opposition.
Yeah.
And Harvey Locke, despite him being very again, very charismatic, very good in the business community, and very well respected in the business community. And myself being in the business community, we've never crossed paths, but when we did, I mean, you've got to know who you're running against. And this man just straight out could not remember who the hell I was or my face. And I don't even think he would have recognized me if we were standing in the room next to each other.
He was just in his own bubble. And I mean, you know what? Honestly, though, I've run in a few elections in my day. I always remember the people I'm running against because it was always smaller elections. But yeah, it sounds like he was just not really paying attention, I guess.
The only way I can really put it, I mean, let's be point blank, the guy was a knob.
We started off saying nice things about people. Harvey Locke is a knob.
Well, I mean, a knob can't necessarily be a bad compliment. I mean, a knob is used to open a door.
That's true. He's good enough to open a door.
There you go.
So we can use Harvey Locke for something positive for opening doors. That's
there
great.
you go. There you go. See, we took the negative and we turned it into a positive.
I was thinking of actually, I just remember this, and I wanted to tell this story because we were talking about partisan politics. And this, I'm not going to name any candidates or people, even though I want to, and just slander them and just talk about them like garbage, because really I hate them to this day, and I think they shouldn't be in power. These particular people, not necessarily the parties they are with, but at one point in my career, a few years ago, as a student, I got a job with a local MLA. I got this, the summer student job. You're there for 4 months. You get to answer phones and shake hands with them.
And of course, we just want to clarify that MLA is member of Legislative Assembly and not Mr. Lawyer Asshole.
Yeah. So we, Mr. Lawyer Asshole, I appreciate that. So I worked for this particular MLA. I was there for maybe a month. And what MLAs do when they have summer students, they bring them to the legislature, no matter where they're from. This is a tradition. They bring their summer student up to the gallery. And when it's their time to speak, they introduce their summer student. Everyone claps. And everyone recognizes you. And it was one of the greatest feelings ever, because I'd only been there one other time before. I've been in the ledge a few times, but never in the gallery, like in a cool way. There was only one other time when I was student president. I got there late, missed them introducing our student group, because I had a bleeding nose and coughing up blood. That wasn't good. But this time, it was all about me. Jeff Agnew stands up there. I'd like to recognize Jeff Agnew, my summer student. Wow, this is the greatest feeling. I'm on fire. That's on a Friday. I get back to work on a Monday. And I find out that one of the other members of the Legislative Assembly, one of the members of his party, had recognized me because I'd helped out another candidate run against her. Now, that candidate was actually my girlfriend at the time, who was a name on a ballot as a nice thing. At that point, I lost my job. I lost my job, even though I'd been there a month. I was working for the government of Alberta, not the government of Canada, or sorry, not the particular party, but I was employed by the government of Alberta, and I was forced out and lost my job. And that is partisan politics. They thought I could have been a spy, all these things. Wouldn't matter. What I was doing was answering phones, and I wasn't like, good day, like, this is MLA asshole's office. Like, I was doing my job properly, but I lost my job because I had been affiliated with another party. So that's a bad thing for partisan politics, because I think I was really good at that job. I was getting along with everybody, and they gave me mad credit until they found out I was a member or somehow affiliated with another team. So
most definitely, and that really is the case with partisan politics. People get so caught up in their viewpoint or their affiliation with one particular party that they forget why they are there.
Yeah.
And that is not to represent the party. It's to represent the people and the viewpoint that you share with the people you represent.
And that's the one thing you represent. When you're in government, you're representing all the people. No matter who votes for you or not, you're supposed to represent their views as well. And I remember this particular MLA, there's no question in my mind that, he wasn't even like double thinking like about firing me or not. He would come into the office storming about, if somebody had a difference of opinion, they were a communist or they were this, that, or the other. And, it's probably better in the long run that I didn't stay there the rest of my 3 months. But it was really sad to see that this person had won based upon the party they ran for and not so much the person that was representing the area. And we've, anybody in Alberta will probably make this joke. A watermelon could run for a particular party, that's very well voted for in this province and win. It's true, especially in Calgary. We're one color, we're blue. That's it. The odd Liberal wins in the provincial election.
Well, you know what else is blue? Depression.
Yeah. But that's it. That's it. I mean, what was it? There was only 2 NDP that won in all of Alberta. No Liberals in the last federal election, and the 2 NDP, which made me laugh, were right beside where was it? The University of Alberta. Communist Central is what my professors used to call it. So I appreciate that. So there we go. that's how we go. But partisan politics, I personally want nothing to do with it. Actually, one day I plan to run civically. I want to run for a council position. I want to represent the best I can for all citizens of their viewpoints, even the crazy ones.
And you know what? That's what a lot of people suggest is to get into the politics, you have to build a following. The best way to do that is to run locally on the municipal level and sort of build a reputation before you move up.
And that's what I'm hoping to do. A lot of people want to do that as well.
Well, the registration deadline isn't over yet for...
I'm not doing it this year. Maybe 6 years down the road. We'll see how Fresh FM takes off, but use that kind of as a jumping point as well.
Most definitely. Just for the record, thanks, Michelle Russell. You have a comment here following your comment about you losing your job. You were good, and they were jerks, but that's okay, because you're going to rock it in future.
Thanks, baby. Or a random girl that's on there that I just might call baby in a non-sexist way.
Yes, no kidding. But getting back to the subject of things, honestly, how would you, if you were to run for any sort of office in the future? How would you see yourself running, and how would you best represent the people, and try to be sort of non-partisan versus partisan with the people?
I think the best idea, and this might sound crazy,
or I guess, would you be partisan or non-partisan?
Well, there's some opinions you have to have. Like, I won't have hatred toward any particular group of people specified on gender, race, sexuality, or anything. I don't ever represent hatred or extreme dislike toward any group of people. There's always some point where I can meet with them, intellectually, right? There's nowhere that I am so opposed to. Maybe haters. I hate haters. There you go. Where do I find myself best representing the people of Calgary? I want to hear their ideas first. I want to see what we're really lacking. I can go out there and give you a million ideas of things that I like, but I want to hear their ideas first, what they think is the best for change, because you're representing them.
Absolutely. And I was at when I was running, I actually implemented I actually came up with a strategy that I thought would best represent the voice of the people I was running to represent. And that was a simple thing. I call it a tattered system of government, where that's an acronym for topic, awareness, discussion, research, decision.
Yeah.
And through that tattered system of government, it allows people not only to be involved in the decision-making process, but to allow them to have a say and feel like they're being heard.
Absolutely. All those town hall meetings that used to have the government had with people, whether or not they ever agreed with the town hall meetings, but they did that. And I kind of liked that during Ralph Klein's time, that they'd have town hall meetings. You never hear about that anymore. I think Stelmach got rid of it, but that was a cool thing. You could go to these things.
They didn't get rid of it. They still had it. They had it during my election process. The provincial or the federal PC party actually put on a couple of events for us while we were running.
Okay, but that was the federal, though. It wasn't provincial.
Federal, not provincial.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't provincial.
Federal, not provincial.
Yeah, so the provincial ones, the town hall meetings were the government consulting the people, saying this is an idea we have. Do you support it or no? More direct democracy. Even though they can never be held to a vote or anything, they would see first before they did any major change. I like that. Even the rural versus the city in this province is very divided in opinion. At least they give both opportunities to speak.
Absolutely, and obviously there's a difference. There's always going to be a difference of opinion. It's just human nature. There's going to be opposition in everything and every place.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we have to be divided with that opposition. We can still work together. We can put aside our differences and our different, conflict of personality, opinion, and so forth. Work together to create a resolution or an ultimatum that sort of works for everybody's favor and benefit.
Well, my dad used to tell me a lot about this, in particular the rural versus the city vote. And, I didn't really think about it, but he used to tell me when he lived in Manitoba, Winnipeg was the big city. And they would be about 50% of the seats, and everybody else kind of filled in the rest. And Winnipeg always dictated what the province was going to do. In Alberta, it's a lot different. The rural areas have a big representation as compared to the cities. What is it? 2/3 of the population live in Edmonton and Calgary. You know, and then everybody else kind of lives in. Well, we got Red Deer, Lethbridge. That's another big chunk. You throw in Fort Mac. That's probably maybe 50% or 500,000 right there. So then we got everybody else living where else, but they have a big chunk of representation. They have seats, you know, for every 10,000 people almost. My hometown of High River has just as much representation as you know, huge chunks of Calgary, which is insane for population size, but that's the way it always was.
And you know, even being a candidate and attending a lot of the public debates and the community debates, even during the Calgary Centre by-election, what I found was there was a huge sense of community. People came together, and little halls, you know, that were supposed to hold, you know, 50 to 100 people were filled with a couple hundred people, and they all wanted to come out and ask questions and listen to everybody and have a say and figure out who it was that, you know, there was no partisanship at these debates. It was people coming out and listening to everybody so that they could make an educated and informed decision without the onus of a particular political party interfering with their decisions.
Do you think, even though voter not representation, but the population of people voting is dropping dramatically, the well-educated person that's going to vote and the nonpartisan person, do you think that's growing, and maybe that's a good thing? So we're weeding the stupid people out.
Absolutely,
don't give a crap.
But I mean, at the same time, we don't want to exclude the stupid people. I mean, they still need to have a say.
Well, I don't mean stupid as in they're themselves stupid, but they're stupid toward the subject.
Stupid towards the political subject.
There's lots of things that I'm stupid toward.
And you know what? I mean, you know, last week we had Thomas Stone on the show, and I mean, his biggest feedback, his biggest beef was that you know, going out in the streets interviewing people with different topics, and nobody wants to get involved in politics anymore. Nobody cares, and people point blank are doing themselves a disservice when they say, I don't want to follow politics because I just don't care.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately doing themselves not only a disservice to themselves, but to the people involved around you. Because what you're doing by saying that, by not being aware of political topics, you're allowing the government, you're allowing the people who you are supposed to be electing and monitoring and who are supposed to be making decisions for you, do whatever the hell they want and have free run.
Now, I want to hear your opinions on why you think the populations of people are dropping, the percentage-wise. Because I've read some really good articles in the university about it, but I want to hear your, as a political candidate, a former one.
As a political candidate, I talked to other people. I got out to the community. I talked to people. I reached out to my people, and I wanted to hear their concerns. And the biggest, number one issue that I found, I ran my campaign on the premise of, are you being heard, Calgary? And I firmly believed it. And unfortunately, even with that mentality, the mentality of being offering an actual opportunity for Calgary to have their voice and to to have their concerns addressed, what ended up happening was people just sort of shook their heads at it, said, yeah, right, yeah, okay, just another politician, you're just going to get elected. I mean, I actually in one debate compared the status of politics. I compared political candidates to the bad boyfriend who, you know, butters you up, tells you whatever you want to hear until he gets what he wants, and then you never see him again.
Yeah.
And I actually poked fun at that and said, you know what, I'm not going to say that I am, going to call you every night and love you, but I'm going to try my best to make sure I'm here for you and not just be the bad boyfriend who never calls after our first one-night stand.
Yeah. I see, the one thing I noticed, especially reading a lot of different things in the university, especially because they're really starting to study this a lot now because it's dropping so fast. But we're seeing, people involved in religion, the church is losing members, the church being, whether it's the synagogue, an actual church, a mosque. I think Islam's actually still growing, but everybody else is pretty much losing numbers. Organizations are losing volunteers. Like everything is dropping as a whole. People are, starting to drop out of being part of like organizations. But then if you look online, people are doing some kind of active work. I mean, they are paying attention. They're reading a lot more. The access to information is still there. They'll put, like Nancy for mayor as their little thing on Facebook or whatever.
People aren't necessarily dropping off the political spectrum. They're just going online to voice their opinions now.
And
versus
having a big debate.
Yeah, before you would have that discussion in person with a couple of people or a discussion group or whatever.
Yeah.
People are going more and more online, and at the same time, a lot of the reason that partisanship is on the rise, or sorry, post-partisanship, people who are not affiliating with any particular party. I mean, what's really happening here is people are losing confidence in leadership. They just don't care because, exactly as I said earlier, they have this attitude now that, sure, he seems nice, but even if I give him my vote, what's going to happen 3 months from now? He's never going to take my call or listen to what I have to say. And as a result of that, as a result of the arrogance and the ignorance of the people who we elected to make decisions on our behalf, not listening to us, not consulting us, and making decisions without our feedback, we are losing interest. And we are getting fed up with helping them get into power just so they can give us the cold shoulder and the middle finger.
It's also very nasty, the politics, or the nature of politics. Attack ads now, like attack ads seem to really push people away. Just the debate, getting kind of personal. It's not healthy anymore necessarily. I mean, it sounds like it was okay when you were a candidate. Like it wasn't nasty. Like nobody came out and straight out slandered you and like burnt your posters down or nothing like that.
Well, I mean, there was a couple of attempts to sort of defame my character as a candidate from other parties. I won't mention any particular party, but there was attempts. And ultimately, the best way for me to handle that, I mean, I had one issue that came up where somebody brought up a criminal charge that was alleged. I was never convicted and I was never sentenced for anything. The charge was withdrawn, but it was still on record. And somebody actually brought that up to me at one point. And also the topic of... Yeah, somebody actually brought that up to me at one point, along with the fact that I didn't have an education. I didn't have a formal college degree. And so I was asked a couple of questions. One, how are you going to handle this? I mean, you've been accused of... the accusation was fraud. I was accused of fraud for... it's a very long and complicated story, but this was brought to my attention during one of my debates. Somebody actually asked the question, well, you've been accused of fraud. How do I know you're going to be different running our country? And I simply answered it very simply. I said, if, this has been weighed on. A judge has answered this question, and the question to answer your question, I've not been accused of fraud. I've not been convicted of fraud. Somebody felt that I did the wrong. The judge weighed fairly in determining that this was not the case. And further to that was the topic of my education. What qualifies you as somebody without a college background to run our country and handle the affairs of our country? And I, what I said to that? I said, very simply put, we are electing people who have these degrees, who are qualified, who we believe are educated and well versed and are of high intellect, who have these college degrees. And look where that's gotten us. All they want to do is get a paycheck and ignore us.
Yeah.
What about the guy who doesn't have the education, who's just like the rest of you? I mean, do we not remember Ralph? He had a grade A education, and he did things differently because of it. So, to answer that question, I mean, I was judged based on my education. I mean, yeah, people did try to mudslide. It's just the nature of the political beast.
I can't believe that somebody would do that, but I mean, I guess that does happen. Like I said, I lost a job because of politics, and people do their research really, really well. It's just sad. I mean, I really like your opinion, though, on not having a formal education, because just because somebody's self-interested without an education doesn't mean they'll be not self-interested once they get the college education.
I can only state this point blank. At no point in the Canadian Constitution does it state that you must have a college degree to run for office.
Yeah.
It's not in the Constitution. In the Constitution, that any person who wants to exercise their rights to democracy has that right and does not need X credentials to be in that position.
If I have a bachelor's of fine arts and I have a bachelor's of arts and I don't have a bachelor's of anything, but we compare and contrast ideas, and the person with no degree or the person with a bachelor of fine arts has the best ideas, does that somehow still make them lesser than the person who has maybe a bachelor's of commerce or something like that, just because they have maybe a higher ranking degree in society's point of view? I don't think so. I took arts myself. I'm about to graduate the arts degree, I think my degree is just as valuable as somebody who's taken fine arts or somebody who's taken business. We've all had to take similar classes. And for somebody who doesn't, my dad actually, I want to bring my dad because I like bringing him up. He had a grade 8 education, self-made man, read phenomenal amounts of literature from everything from the great classics all the way through to modern political works, everything from Churchill. We go through, I guess, Margaret Thatcher and Reagan. He was a little conservative. But he also read Tommy Douglas's book. He read about every single political party, every political perspective. He lived on that stuff. But he had a grade 8 education. He was a self-made businessman, very successful. My family did very well because of his education on his own. So we can never put that down.
Absolutely. And I mean, to relate to your father, that's exactly how I am. I am a self-made individual. I have never needed an education. And frankly, I've been fortunate to cross paths with people who give me a better, more concise level of education. I don't want to learn from the professor who makes $60,000 a year to give me the practical theory on how to run a business. I want to learn from the multi-million-dollar business owner, CEO, executive who's making millions because he owns a business.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with the education system, is that we're teaching people theory, but we're not teaching them how to apply the theory they're being taught.
Actually, one thing we are missing, though, is the people that you meet. It's the connections you meet in university and college. And I would stand up to my last days and say, please go to university college. I think it's a great thing because there's so many connections. You learn so many life lessons. You learn how to drink out of strange objects. But you meet some of the best friends you've ever had. You still meet connections. One thing I learned also is I met so many different people outside of my field that taught me so much more about life, as well as my professors. They were great. But had I not gone to university, I don't think I would have been, I wouldn't know as much about a particular subject, but I would still be, a good leader.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've exuded in droves my leadership skills in my business, in my previous employment, where I've ascended to positions of management within less than a month because of how well I lead and take charge and show that not only can I be a team player and treat everybody fairly, but also, get things done in a productive and efficient manner.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's, not a skill you can learn in the classroom. You need to learn how to, there has to be balance. There is definitely skills that need to be taught in a classroom. I mean, as I said last week during my discussion with Mr. Stone, I can't walk into a medical clinic, put on an apron and say, "I'm here to give you surgery," when I know nothing about how to perform it.
Thank God you can.
Obviously, I'd have security on me before I even grab the scalpel.
Yeah,
but
let's hope so.
Yeah, well, we would hope so anyway.
Maybe not nowadays.
There is always misfortunes. Next week's topic.
Yeah. Random doctors showing up in the year.
Yeah.
No,
self-proclaimed doctors.
But going along those lines, I mean, yes, you do have to get certain qualifications for certain jobs. That just makes sense. You have to get a certain qualification to drive a vehicle. You have to get a license. You have to prove that you know how to do it.
And there's obviously a lot of controversy over that as well. I mean, some people call it a privilege. Others say, this is my God-given right. You're not taking this away from me.
Yeah, there's always people that are going to say anything's a right. I truly believe that nothing's a right in this world, but you have to go and earn it and make it so. The only thing that laws are paper barriers. But if we're willing to stand up as a society, then they're worthwhile. But
who's passing those laws? Is it people who are just like us, who were elected in a position where they can pass those legislations, or is it people with prestigious backgrounds who we keep electing based on a partisan affiliation? People like former doctors, lawyers, business people.
Well, Trudeau is a lawyer, and he helped create certain rights and the Constitution that allowed for more rights for people. He was more of a left-wing person, but Mulroney also had some good ideas as well that he helped bring in, some bad ideas. I think they both did. Let's go back. Pretty much, you could go to pretty much any leader. They had their goods and their bads.
Absolutely, and the same could be said of any person. I mean, I was chastised. I was revered as a man of the people. I had a very large following during my campaign, But at the same time, I was also chastised heavily for the smallest things. And you know what? My political party leader told me the best sign of a good candidate is public backlash, because it shows that along with your moving forward and creating a following, you've also got people who are going to oppose your viewpoint or something you've done wrong because they don't agree with you.
But they're paying attention.
But they're paying attention. They
That's
know
good.
you're there.
Yeah.
On that note, obviously we are at the end of the show here.
Wow, that went quickly.
I mean, yeah, it went by really quickly. Jeff, always a riot. Appreciate you joining us on the show here. And just before we close up here, again, just some announcements. Make sure you check out Fresh FM during the week, because we got some awesome shows going on, like our Get Buck Mondays, Beat Bash Tuesdays. Friday night, we've got Wood Shack Rap, Cherry Haze Fridays, DT Presents DJ DJ No One, and Bumpin' the Night. Also, make sure you check us out Saturday nights, because we've got a great selection of hosts. And make sure you stay tuned to Fresh FM, because coming up next is Aisha Ali and with Aisha's Word Radiology. On that note, Jeff, once again, a special thanks to you for joining us on the show here and in studios tonight. And also a special thanks to our associate producer, Thomas Stone, who's taking care of all our video work. And once again, just a reminder to check us out on Fresh FM. Check out our page for any updates on the show. And also make sure you check out our YouTube channel, Fresh Politics, at YouTube, just to make sure if you miss a show, or if you want to see what things are what's really happening here behind the microphone in studio, we can certainly give you that visual. Just check us out, because we are broadcasting all of our live sessions in studio right to our YouTube channel. So make sure you check us out there, Fresh Politics YouTube. And on that note, I'm going to sign off. That's DJ Dee Benz with Fresh FM, and you are listening to Politically Inclined. Make sure you stay tuned for Aisha Ali and Word Radiology.
Bring the bass.